power button, I guess, if it's, well,
Pass that remote over.
that TV's on. We'll just aim the camera a little bit. Dave, can you scooch over this way just a little bit? You scooch this way just a little bit. I want to get the chief in there too. Okay. Call the Ware Board of Fire Wards monthly meeting to order for December 13th, 2021. And the first item of the business is correspondence. None. New business.
I don't have any.
Okay. I do have something that I'd like to talk about. Well, we voted in the spring. I don't remember. I think it was might have been the June meeting when the state and everything cooled down about the masks. We had a vote to not have to wear masks in the fire station. And my concern about us doing that vote and thinking back on that time, we thought everything was kind of over. The emergency was, the emergency orders were being lifted, et cetera. And now that we're facing increased COVID, I'm not suggesting that we go back to that, but I think that we should think about giving the fire chief, which he has the authority over the workforce, basically. So I think that's one of those things that we probably should officially make his discretion, because things can change. And so in order to, if, say, for example, I know EMS, the state EMS was given guidance on workforce protection during that pandemic early on. And so should they come up with it again or something else, I think that we shouldn't have to call a meeting together to act on it. So I wanted to bring that up to see what your thoughts were. I'm in favor of handing that to because the problem is where we took the vote to not require masks, then we would have to act to do something different. And I think that I believe that the fire chief should have the flexibility to be able to protect the workforce as needed.
Are you talking about for employees?
I'm talking about for the
public
workplace and the workforce.
Well, so I have an issue with it on the grounds that it's not scientific. The masks, no matter how many cases there are, whether there's none or there's many, they are ineffective at preventing the spread of COVID-19. Unless you're wearing an N95 that's properly fitted, which the staff are, the employees are fitted for N95 masks, and it's protection for them. That's about 90% effective at preventing, becoming infected with a virus. But if you're doing paper masks for just anyone who comes in, it's little more than, it's a superstition. And I object to requiring the public, if they come in for whatever reason, to be required. We don't have the town hall. We don't have any mandate for any other
I'm not,
town
I'm,
employees.
right, so that isn't really the issue here. The issue is giving the chief the authority to act in the best interests that he or she sees fit to protect the workforce and the workplace.
No,
And I'm not saying that it's specifically that issue, but that's an issue where we took a vote for a specific action. And first of all, where the board was formed, when the board was formed and voted in by the town, the fire chief was given the authority and responsibility for the workforce, not the fire wardens.
but
And
we
so
set the
one one could argue that we shouldn't have done that in the first place, that it should have been up to the fire chief's discretion. All I'm saying is that I want to consider that we give him the authority to be able to protect the workforce in a way that he sees, or she, if it ever is a girl, sees fit.
I think it flies in the face
So-
of the fact that the town established a board of fire wards to create and/or eliminate and adjust policies. If they didn't want a board of fire wards, and, you know, it failed when it came to a motion, or it came to a vote in the town, you know, sure, it would be the chief's discretion, but the people of Ware chose to create a board of fire wards to set the policies. And we're elected to do that. We've been entrusted by the public to do that. That's our role, and we should not be giving it away.
So when you establish rules, procedures, et cetera, like standard operating procedures, and even the fire chief delegates that authority to whoever is maybe on the scene, because they're the ones that have to make the on-the-spot decisions. And so this is kind of what I'm talking about, is that we delegate things out to the fire chief and others routinely. And we set policies, but there are situations that we don't have to be so rigid that we have to be called every time there's a decision that has to be made. We set the policies, which a lot of those are guidelines. And the actual decision made is up to that person within the parameters that we set.
Sure.
And so my issue is not, it has nothing to do with masks or not.
Well, it does. The whole thing is about masks,
Wh-
whether we allow the fire chief to set the policy on them or not.
Okay, so it's about workplace and workforce safety, which I believe goes hand in hand.
Well, I disagree that it's about safety. And
Well,
I disagree that we should delegate that to the chief. That's just where I stand on it. And I think that most of the taxpayers in Ware would probably agree with that.
I don't know that. I really don't, I'm not that confident that they all agree on that.
I don't think
I'm
they
not
all
talking about my personal opinion on mass. I'm talking about
the chief's person.
having the authority to deal with workplace safety as things come up. If they come up with guidelines that need to be followed, there's supposed to be a reason for that. And there's all kinds of politics involved in this particular issue. But I don't want to see the chiefs or whoever is put in charge of those situations hands tied to where we have to wait for a fire wards meeting to make a decision. That's my concern, and that's why I brought it up. We're we can argue back and forth all day long on the validity of that particular issue. I'm talking more about the concept of being able to make decisions as conditions change.
Well, I would think if CDC or the state of New Hampshire issues another mask mandate, we will have to abide by that, regardless of whether it's the board or the chief making that decision. I see it as almost a non-issue.
So, but if they come up, if they decide that it's a good idea to do it, to bring it in force again, we actually, our last vote was that we won't require it. And so what I'm saying is that then we have to call another meeting or whatever to revisit that.
If it's enacted through the legislature, then it's a law and it overrides our policy.
CDC guidelines, EMS guidelines don't go through the legislature.
They're
Normally.
guidelines, that's right.
Right. So, but you also, as a not just a healthcare provider, but as a workplace safety, responsible for the workplace safety, you have to take prudent action sometimes.
And it should be evidence-based.
I'm not going to argue the issue anymore. That's an issue that I think that shows that we need to give that flexibility to the fire chief.
I think you need to take a vote on it. Because I'm in favor. Because we go to church, we have to wear a mask.
My church
You go
doesn't.
shopping, you have to wear a mask.
I don't.
And it is helping protecting the next person.
Healthcare
I
facility,
also feel it's protecting me.
healthcare facilities still require it.
Oh, yeah, everywhere you go.
I'm not saying we should or
getting worse.
shouldn't. I'm just saying that it shouldn't
You
be,
want to give him the authority, and you know that he will. So,
I think that
and I
he,
think it violates the rights of the employees
I think
and
that,
other people going into the fire department.
I
they
think
should
that
have the
it
right to-
gives us, as an organization, the proper responsibility, flexibility that's needed to run an organization like we have. And that's my personal belief. So I'd like to make a motion that we give the fire chief or his designee the authority to deal with situations as they come up, dealing with workplace safety and workforce safety.
Second it.
That's your motion? That's very broad.
I said this isn't just the mask.
So what else does it extend to? Vaccine requirements? What else? He already has the authority to, provide workforce safety guidelines for staff within what we've, what he's been, his role as chief, and what he's been granted. You said that it had to do with the masking, and you were talking about, it was the motion that we made, and basically overturning that motion and then giving the authority to the chief. I think the motion that you've made is very broad and doesn't really let us know what the limit is and the specifics of it.
Well, he is responsible for the workforce. That's spelled out in the formation of the board.
Yep.
And so it's not like we're, in my opinion, that we're giving him something that he already doesn't have. I think that we kind of took it
Then why make
away.
the
I
motion?
think that we kind of took it away when we made the mask mandate and then lifted it.
So shouldn't the motion be specifically to overturn the motion from the meeting in March or May, whenever it was, and then give the authority specifically regarding masking policies to the chief? Shouldn't it be
Well-
specific if he already has otherwise why make the motion if he already has the authority? You're talking about specifically masks, right?
Well,
It
that
just needs
was,
to be clear.
that's the issue that I'm talking about, yes. So if he already has that, then it doesn't hurt to just stipulate it.
Well, we stipulated by our vote that he doesn't have the authority when it comes to masking, and that they shall not be required, because the board voted that he can't make a policy requiring masks.
And
I
so
think the motion that you're trying to make
I believe that
is-
was against what the town voted when they made the vote to establish the board and give the authority to the fire chief that they did.
I disagree.
That's fine.
Board, it
That's
says right
fine.
in the warrant article that the board sets the policies and conducts the business of the fire department.
But it also stipulates that the fire chief is over the workforce.
Right, but you're talking about a policy, him setting a policy. A policy of requiring masks.
Okay, my motion's on the floor and it's been seconded. Can you read it back to us, chief?
It was seconded by Dave.
Yes.
A motion to give the fire chief or designee the authority to deal with workplace safety and workforce safety. That's all I got.
I don't think that motion overturns our vote. I don't think it's specific enough that it overturns it, and he already has a lot of that, authority when it comes to workforce safety, determining how many staff is on at a time, and,
I would have to go back and see what we actually voted on. The way I remember it is we voted to lift a mask mandate in the station. We didn't take any authority away from the chief. There was no mask policy. I'd really have to review that before I'd feel comfortable voting on this either way.
Well, stand by. When do you think that was?
I think it was the June 2021 meeting.
Was it on Flag Day? The motion is motion by Leah Cushman, seconded by Wayne Meady to remove the requirement that personnel and the public wear masks inside the fire station.
I believe the intent of that was to align with the state and CDC recommendations at that time.
No, I wasn't on the board when it was put in place, but I concur that that probably was the
Well, the
intent.
beginning of those remarks was ending the mask mandate at the fire stations in light of the governor's latest declaration.
Right.
And because it's my understanding that because the board had taken a vote to require masks in the station, that we needed to take a vote to rescind it. And I just think that it would be,
I believe that to be true. Do you want me to look that up, or?
We never took a vote to require masks.
I believe we did.
Oh, actually, yeah, you're right. But first, it was a policy without a vote.
So I don't see that we've restricted you from being able to require masks for employees if it's in accordance with state guidelines.
well, we voted basically that, what, I don't know the exact language, but it was my understanding that masks would not be required in the building.
Yeah, it wasn't contingent on state guidelines at all. It was just that, oh, do you want these?
All right,
So,
I stand corrected.
so is there any other questions or discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have 4, 1, 0. Is there any other new business? Okay, we'll move on to approval of minutes. Be from November 8th meeting.
I would move to accept the minutes as printed.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and second. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Okay, it passes 4-0-1.
Sign the second one.
All right, next item is the manifest. Somebody wants to read that second page there and make a motion? Or I can do it? There you go. Okay. I motion to accept the fire department's accounts payable manifest for checks dated 12/16/2021 in the amount of $12,451.91.
Second that.
Motion's made and second. Is there any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
That's everybody here.
5-0-0. All right. Next item is administrative report.
Administrative report, we can talk about the 21 and 22 budget. In the capital improvement program that went before the Board of Selectmen was changed before it went to the Finance Committee, and that change involved the Life Pack 15s that were in the CIP. And that was due to the fact that we have an opportunity to purchase, replace those units with the modern version of that unit. What had been a $75,000 CIP request, we're able to purchase those with a 5-year maintenance agreement for $53,000 and change, I believe. And I brought that forward to the selectmen to make that purchase out of end-of-year funding, which they agreed to, and so we removed it from the CIP.
Good deal.
That, the pricing that they gave us, they could guarantee to the end of the year. They could not guarantee what the price would be come April if we'd gone through the process. So I think it was a good deal, and the funds were available, so. In conjunction with that, we are seeking, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Some sort of funding source where the community was earmarked $50,000 to be used for purchases that are that have some relatability to the pandemic. And I'm paraphrasing, so if I mess this up, that's my apologies. And so we made application to that. The finance administrator did. We're still waiting to hear back from the state of whether or not that's an eligible equipment purchase. I don't see why it wouldn't be. We just haven't got the final okay on that. That'll be a almost works like a pass-through grant where we front the money, the 53 grand for the purchase. The state, or I ultimately think the feds, reimburse the community $50,000. That'll go to the general fund to offset that purchase. So
We're
the
talking
net-
about the monitors?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
net to us would be less than $4 grand. So
Okay.
What monitors?
The life packs.
the life
Oh,
pack
okay.
15s.
So what are they exactly? I wasn't here at the last meeting.
What are the life pack 15? It's a cardiac defibrillator.
Okay.
Well, plus,
Well, it allows us
So
to
much
do
more.
a bunch of other stuff, right? So it's manual and AED, does non-invasive pacing,
I know what they are now.
yeah, SpO2, SpCO, the blood pressure, 12 lead. Also does, we can transmit that to the ER
how,
to
how,
reduce our door-to-balloon time.
how accurate is the CO? How does that work? Is that a clip-on thing like the SpO2 or?
Yeah, and so it has a sophisticated sensor, and by shining the light through your finger, right, somehow it's looking at that reflection off your hemoglobin, and it's able to distinguish between oxygen and carbon monoxide.
Is it fairly accurate? Is it accurate?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's great to have in the field.
It's a piece of equipment that we probably use on nearly every incident that the ambulance goes to. We probably use that more than the cot, which we use
Yeah.
98% of the time, so.
So we were due for replacements.
Yeah, the original, we had two. The original one predates me, so that goes back to 2010-ish. I purchased the second one because we had two different brands when I got here. And that was purchased, I think, in 12. And they're just at the end of their service life. In fact, we can't, depending on what the parts are, if it needs a motherboard, there are none available, so. It's just at the end of its,
So this would be to
It's
get
next
two of them?
this gets two, yep. And, assuming that funding comes through, at such a great price point. really.
Good.
So that's CIP. On the budget side of things, in the '21 budget, we have overall, we're in very good shape. There's a couple of spots in the budget that jump off the page at you. One of them is the vehicle repair line. That is a line that covers all of our motor vehicles. We are funded at $15,000, which is a typical year. That includes tires to parts, to if we send the truck out to something, to a mechanic, et cetera. This year, I did find it. There it is. And in this year, we're funded at 15,000, we have spent 24,000 this year. The big culprit there is engine 2, with the replacement of the radiator, et cetera, most recently. And ambulance 2, where it broke the rear end and needed to be replaced. Another one, which is consistently underfunded really, is medical safety gear. And that's really just a reflection of the escalating costs of a lot of different things. And the last one is overtime under wages. So the overtime piece, in years past, when we began the full-time program, is we picked a percentage that we assumed in the very beginning that overtime would roughly be about 10% of wages. That was fine in the beginning, and then what we saw beginning this year was with employees that had been here for a year or more than a year, is that they started to use their earn time. And so we needed to, one, account for that in the budgeting process going forward. And also we had a number of vacancy days, if you will, days that were directly related to we don't have an employee on the books that should be on the books, if you will. That accounted to
So basically just due to low staffing.
due to low staffing. So of the shift coverage hours that we had, or of the total hours that we spent in overtime, which is roughly 1,500 hours of overtime, 1,140 of those are directly related to staffing, shift coverage, because they were either on vacation, out sick, they resigned, they,
Quarantine.
we didn't have them. We had quarantine issues. That surprisingly didn't account for a huge amount of that number, but we did have some vacancy time. We had one vacancy that was about 2 months when we had an employee leave in the spring. And then we've been carrying 2 vacancies since November 13th with the resignation of Trevor and Thomas.
And what about the fourth shift, or the third shift until July 1st or whenever we hired, and now we have the fourth shift that we're covering per diem? Was any of that, did we end up having to cover that with?
Well, we have some coverage in that, so when we have a vacancy in that particular fourth shift that we use per diems for, we intend to use the per diem or the call force for that. We've been fairly successful, but there are times where we can't find someone to work. And so that may necessitate a shift coverage. Those are usually in smaller blocks, right? So that's not a 24-hour coverage piece. That's like a 10-hour day or a 14-hour night or something. But I think those are certainly fewer
Okay.
in nature. But that stuff does come up, and we had someone call out that is scheduled to work Thursday, I think, right? So it doesn't give us a lot of time to find someone to fill that. And we've tried to accomplish that in a number of ways. But ideally, for that fourth shift, we certainly plan to use the per diem people or the part-time employees for that. On a full-time shift, it really kind of depends on who's remaining, right? Because we have different skill levels and stuff, where we may have, let's say, the higher skilled employee is out on vacation day, may necessitate hiring or may not hire. We may find, hey, we got someone to work, but it really puts us at a very low level of skill set, so we may decide, you know what, it's better if we hire, a higher skilled employee for that. And it's a balance. We know we don't have enough overtime going into the year, or typically, that's how most places work. And we have a small workforce, but in a larger workforce, it's a little more evident where we know we're gonna have a vacancy, right? Or we may have a vacancy of some sort, and so it's actually less expensive for some of our employees to be on overtime than it is to have a fully benefited employee on payroll, right? So even though that overtime number looks bad, when it all gets down to the bottom line, it's actually a little less expensive than what
Another
we've
full-time.
budgeted for that, right? That's 21. 22 is, again, operating under that concept that we had for the last couple of years, which is to endeavor to come in at default. And we're able to do that in the very beginning stages of the budget process. And we still have the ability to do that. The one thing, as Steve and I were speaking earlier today, is that the budget, even though it's been presented to the selectmen, there are still a couple of things that are being, getting a fine point on. Most of those occur in the salary lines. We had 2 vacancies. We're hiring, so those vacancies go into the budget as they were funded previously. That new employee or employees may cost more or less than what that number was. So the proposed budget number, I don't think is 100% cast in concrete, but I'm pretty confident that we will be at default when we're all said and done. I know that you had talked about maybe voting on, when we sent out, I don't even remember what month that was, the budget email, let's say
It's a
2
couple months ago, yeah, or a month
and
or
you-
so
I
ago.
think you asked if we were gonna vote on that, and I think we.
Kent, do you have a number for us? Or
Well, as I s-
you want to come
Well,
in?
as I spoke, I said, I think that if we were to, that's not gonna give me what I want. If we were to pick a number, right, that we could get to the default number, I'm very comfortable if we do that. It's in here somewhere. I just haven't looked at it for a while. Do you have it?
No.
You bear with me. Oh, it's in here. So I have a default number, and the default number won't change, of $1,053,930.
So you're saying that we can make the budget, the proposed budget, the same as what the default number is?
Yep.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Well, I just would like to see the breakdown, I guess, of, you know, the line items, and
I sent that out.
you did? No, I didn't see it.
I didn't bring it with me.
I have this. Which one did I just have for you, Steve?
I think
This
you
one?
highlighted the ones that like stand out, you know, as seeming like increases. I mean, if the proposed is the same as the default, it's, you know, it sounds good, but. When did you send that out?
It was, I think it was right after the last meeting.
Don't really know. This has a little more detail than this one does. This is what goes to the selectmen, but is essentially a reflection of that sheet. That just has a little more detail. Things that may not be on that one was lawn care. That's a bid that they've since awarded, going to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, that was one of the things that, on last month, you had.
Yeah, there was I believe, the dispatch contract hadn't been approved. But I know let me see if it's in this one. But it's in this one, so I'm assuming it's in that one.
What's that number, chief?
Dispatch contract is 24,707, is that?
And how,
It's
how
it's
many-
account 342, or line 317, I think I have lines on there now.
Oh, yeah, you do.
how many years is that?
Okay, here it is.
So it's 3 years,
Oh,
and as I spoke,
318, yeah.
about dispatch, right, is that, the possibility of going to capital, is regardless of whether we go or not go, our contract ends with Goffstown now. And so we needed to redo the contract. In the discussion with the police department, or the chief of police in Goffstown, was to be very clear that one, we needed to renew, and two, we may not stay. Just so that he was aware of what was going on, and that the escape clause, if you will, was agreeable to both sides going into it. What was interesting is that with the fire department contract, ours and New Boston's, it required the, either party to notify the other by November 1st of the year prior to, so it gave them like 13 months to notice. I said, well, that's great. I said, but that means I gotta notify you before I even sign this contract that we may not be here. And I said, but it's interesting, if you read the police contracts, they only have a 30-day notice. So we went back and forth on that, and that's what we ended up with.
30 days.
Yeah, and I think the selectmen, I don't know for sure, but I think they signed that this past meeting or meeting before.
What's the price compared to the last contract?
Not ridiculous. It's about $1,000 more
For the 3 years or per year?
per year, and it goes up, don't quote me, but 3 to 5% a year. Each year it goes up.
Thank you.
So that was the dispatch one, lawn care, and fuel. And fuel was expensive this year. Our increase in fuel was, well, $2,100. The increase in fuel to DPW is like 30 grand. So, I mean, it's a noticeable component in the budget. Other increases that we had was, we had an increase, due to using, I am responding. If we were to go to capital, that cost still remains, even though they have that functionality, it's something we still have to pay for. We saved some money on the EMS service contracts for the, Life Pack and Lucas support. We're on a year-to-year contract with them because our Life Pack units are so old that they won't do a multi-year agreement. And that began last year, I think, was the first year we had a one-year contract. Telephone, because we've been in a default budget for 2 years, 3 years now, we've been trying to get the new telephone price into the budget, but because it's been defaulted, that's why it keeps showing up.
Will you be proposing any separate warrant articles for cost, for any additional purchases or expenditures?
Just hold on just a sec. We had a, there was an increase in wages that was a result of the proposed rate being higher than the departed employee. And then overtime, we tried to be more accurate in the number that we were putting in there. So looking at the amount of earned time that employees had, we're earning in the, not actual cost, but just being cognizant of the fact that they're using leave and just putting a finer point on that number. We did save a little bit of money with that Group 1, Group 2 person, right? Group 2 is 33% employer cost for retirement, and Group 1 is 14 and change. So proposed warrant articles is year 4 of the staffing, if you will, right? Adding 2 people per year for 4 years. This represents the last year of that. And the warrant article to see if the voters would approve going to capital area mutual aid. Which part of that is getting dispatch services.
Can you talk about that a little bit? The capital area mutual aid?
Yeah, so a warrant article to see if the town will vote to join the Capital Area Mutual Aid Fire Compact. The Capital Area Mutual Aid Fire Compact is a district fire mutual aid system established under New Hampshire RSA 154:30-F. Membership will convey to the town of Ware in the Ware Fire Rescue Department all rights and responsibilities contained in that statute and by the Capital Area Mutual Aid Fire Compact bylaws, which I have a copy of those. The RSA that's talked about essentially looks at intermunicipal agreements or things. 154:30F really just is allows for the raising of taxes to be spent on such an endeavor. Which just says municipalities belonging to such a system may raise and appropriate money for the purpose of the system. And then it talks about counties a little bit. You know, that counties have that ability as well.
Okay, and so that would eliminate our dispatch costs, like, per a budget line item, and then would be,
Yes, but not in '22.
okay,
And just a couple other things on that. So the bylaws are not, it's not a very thick document. That you must have a tanker, which we have a tanker, you must have a radio, which we do, right, so we can communicate on their system. We must remain in good standing, and if we desire to leave, we had to give them an 18-month notice. So one of the questions that came up was, how does the mutual aid compact membership, the dues portion, how does that work with SB2? I think the only SB2 town that's in the compact now, and I could be mistaken, is Epsom, in where Chief Yetton, and this is all, the question is, if the cost of the mutual aid system goes up, is that defaultable or is it not defaultable? That's in essence the question. And because it's not a contract, it's an agreement, that it's not defaultable. It's you get the last, or the most recent approved amount. And if you get a default budget, then you get that number. If you get multiple default numbers, years, right, it could pose a problem.
yeah,
So,
potentially you could violate that 18-month, requirement if you don't have the funds for it, or,
no, you're the member, so you're gonna get a bill.
So you'd have,
So that
you'd have to
funding
find
would-
some money
would-
somewhere
Would either,
else.
A, ideally, like, we get a proposed budget, or you're scrounging it up from somewhere else.
okay, so, basically, if we did this, we would then put it in next year's proposed budget, right? So that it would every year be paid for. And then, but you'd have to then pass next year's proposed budget, or you wouldn't be able to continue with it, right?
No, what I envision is that,
Financially, like,
the, legislative body, the town voters, would be faced with that warrant article, and if they approve it, then they would be also approving like what that cost is to show in '23's budget, right? So it would be, the agreement would be yep, we agree that we're gonna join the compact. And so that initial year would be in the budget and at the very least defaultable, and it's not gonna hit the budget till '23.
okay.
So the capital area mutual aid, would eliminate the need, or mostly eliminate the need, for the Goffstown dispatch contract. It would eliminate the fire department's need for the radio maintenance portion of the budget. And whether that's in its totality or not, I think remains to be seen as to if we're gonna continue with a maintenance contract for the mobile and handheld radios that are included in that contract. But as far as supporting the infrastructure that exists in the field, that portion would go away. And also, there's a small amount of money, a couple $1,000s, that are related to the electricity for the repeating systems, of which we have 10. It's not a large amount of money. And so the reductions in that would go to offset the cost of capital area.
So what is the cost of the capital area mutual aid?
What is the cost?
Yeah, like to,
Our cost for this year, I don't know if I have that one, is roughly in the neighborhood of $83,000. But with capital, not only do we get the dispatch services, which is one of the biggest parts, you also get the services of the compact coordinator. We also get access to the bariatric patient lifting and transporting equipment. We get the services of the Central New Hampshire Hazmat Team. That's another reduction that we wouldn't, because we pay Sauhegan for that. It's a relatively small amount of money. But, we also get the LEPC, which is a local emergency planning committee services. They take care of that as well, which frankly, almost no one's doing it on their own. So that's a plus. Also allows us to do more group purchasing. One of the things that they did a few years ago is a number of member towns got together and they were able to negotiate a lower rate than we pay for ComStar services by about a percentage point.
Do they do any type of equipment, like central purchases?
They do, they've sent out a couple of RFPs. That's one thing that the coordinator said that he would like to see more of. They did something with SCBA back maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
I know in Lakes Region, we used to have what they call a central purchase, which was everybody submit their proposals for what they want to purchase. The big thing, I mean, some, like 4-inch hose was half price, because instead of buying, 1,000 feet, you're buying
Right.
100,000 plus feet. So some of those things help quite a bit.
Yeah, so one of the big motivators to this has been that the radio system needs to be replaced in town. And so the police department's working on that. Their cost is above $1 million. Our cost to be on that system, like as an add-on, in the initial numbers that we saw was about $400,000. And so is it worth to spend $400,000 today to find out 5 years from now that Goffstown Dispatch says we're not interested in servicing you because we're too busy? Now it's just, not only did you spend the $400,000, but you're still back to where you were. You still have to go to capital. So I think time's now to go, and it relieves us of really 85% of the radio stuff, because capital area owns it and not us, so we don't have to maintain it. We don't have to be responsible for it. So the warrant articles are the ambulance, the full-time employees, and capital.
okay, what's the one on, an ambulance, for a new ambulance?
Yeah, a new ambulance to replace the 2009. With the funding source coming from the fire department vehicle and equipment replacement fund.
Anything else? Anybody got anything else?
I have no idea how many incidents we did this past month. We switched over to the new state reporting system and unable to get a report on it, so. It's improvements.
Okay. So we kind of have, back to the budget, do you, there was talk about approving a proposed budget at the default number. Or talk about it, is that something that we want to vote on?
If it's time to do it and it's not gonna change,
Because you said you're comfortable with that, right, Chief? Even though we're not 100% complete.
Yeah, well, I think we're in, the issue, the problem is if you said, you know, we support saying this much, is if something changes, then we're kind of stuck somewhere. So I'm comfortable saying we will be at default.
Okay.
And that default number is not gonna change at $1 million, whatever it was. $1,053,000. Do you need that number again?
$1,053,930.
Yeah.
There you go. So I make a motion that the board supports a proposed budget at the default number for 2022. Sorry, I thought I should add that to it. Second, Leah?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's made and second. Is there any more questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, 5-0-0. Passes. Anything else, Chief, under administrative?
No. I have the issue of wages. I don't know if you want to do that in this, you want to do it in non-public, you want to do it next month.
Is it specific to an employee?
Well, there's employee information on here.
Okay. If that's the case, then we have to do it non-public, I think.
So I move we enter into a non-public session.
Okay.
Second.
Get my paper out. Could come up with a better system for this. So 91A:3, 2, A, I would say A, which is the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of a public employee.
:3, 2A.
Colon
Roman
3,
numeral 2.
Roman numeral 2, little a in parentheses, yep. Okay, and here's the, keep doing that too, Chief, if you want to take care of that for me. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. Okay, motion's on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. So we have to do a roll call vote.
Are you looking for me?
Yeah, since you got the paper. Basically follow that.
Is that right, the time?
7:06? 7:07?
I got 6. 7:06, yeah. We should have the same time.
Okay, Wayne, motion to, move to go into non-public session under 91A 2A at 19:06. Leah Cushman seconded the motion, roll call vote was taken. Roberts,
Yes.
Huey,
Yeah.
Meady,
Yes.
Cushman,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.